Yeah. 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 And that's important. Yeah. I told you later. Yeah.
Okay, I'll call our study session to order. Will you call the roll?
Commissioner Blevins?
Here.
Commissioner Norwood?
Here.
Commissioner Siragusa?
Here.
Commissioner Roberts will not be in attendance this evening. Commissioner Stallings?
Here.
Commissioner Orr?
Here.
And Mayor Mason.
Here. Item number 2, at the Commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern on the regular session agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about?
We need some new chairs.
New chairs? Well, after we get that Call Water project done, maybe we'll look at that. Speaking of which, on item 3.1, we've got a Call Lake Water Supply Program update. So we'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, Commission. Great to see you all. It's been a few months since we've been up here to talk about the Call Lake project, but we'll get moving, and hopefully we can do it sooner than later to facilitate the chairs.
Yeah.
If you could do it for a little bit less, that would help us afford some new chairs.
I bet we can figure out how to make that happen.
Hey, you're on record.
But we got to decide which part of the
Somebody got that
program we
down.
can live without.
Jason always comes through.
Yeah, Jason always comes through.
So this slide here is an older slide, but you know, where we at, we're obviously in the construction phase of this and our current contractual milestone. We're going to continue to monitor and track this, but from GMP change order number 6, June 27th is the substantial date for manual startup of the water treatment plant. As all parties are aware, we left a few items that we'll continue to monitor progress throughout the course of the remainder of this year and be in continual discussion with city staff as the project advances forward. Another common slide, just from a high-level overview of, and there'll be some other portions, but starting here at Enid at the water treatment plant, and then we've got the 70 miles of the 8 pipeline segments. Up near Garver, we have the intermediate booster pump station, and then all the way up at Call Lake, we have the intake site. So along that 70-mile corridor, and we'll talk about more of the particulars as we get through the program or the progress updates. There are portions of the pipeline currently under construction today, a few portions that are delayed by virtue of the HDD delays. We'll talk about those at high level and then touch on the other 4 facilities separate of the pipelines. Again, major infrastructures. We have the intake structure. Currently, we're marking that roughly 76% complete. Again, as we move later into the agenda from a high level of the intake facility, there's 2 major scope components there. That's the marine scope. For all intents and purposes, the marine efforts of that prior bid package part of solicitation group number 1 are coming near a close. The pipeline segments, approximately 90% complete, and ongoing installation currently within segment 8 all the way up near Call Lake. We've got a couple of areas that'll require some future remobilizations pending completion of the HDDs within segment 7. Intermediate booster pump station, showing that approximately 87% complete. That area has just been temporarily halted with ongoing efforts so the crews can maintain focus of the critical path to water treatment plant. Once we get ahead of the curve to water treatment plant, those crews will free up and move back to the intermediate booster pump station. Water treatment plant, and again, we've got a series of progress photos within here flagging that just over 50% complete. A lot of major activities there. If you haven't visited, please do so. And then Chestnut Water Main, currently 0% complete. sometime later this fall, we look to get moving on that portion of the build, part of the fifth infrastructure. The intake site, probably a familiar view from the prior groundbreaking and the launch party, but this is a view up at the wet well site, looking out onto the barge structure on the lake. And again, the marine crews are actively finishing up in the process of demobilizing. Looking down into the wet well, ironically, today would have been the final placement of concrete. We had an unforeseen delay due to a batch plant issue. That pour has been rescheduled for next week. That'll be the final vertical placement within that wet well. Moving forward from placement of that wet well, we have the structural shell intake package. That'll be the slab and electrical building. So mass concrete pours will continue for the next couple of months to get that site complete outside of the wet well area, and then the above ground efforts will continue. Looking out into Call Lake, the barge structure, the crews had finalized placement of the various micropiling to support the pipe and header assembly. Here's a closer view of those efforts. And again, those activities have subsided and completed, and those crews by close of this month will be fully demobilized. Some of the prior progress, this is the floating log booms that surround the intake header out inside of Call Lake. This was some of the progress photos leading into actual placement. Here's a view of the actual placement surrounding the perimeter of that intake site.
Those are a permanent structure that'll be there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, to keep boats and everything, yeah.
Yes, sir.
What's the depth of the water, the normal depth of the lake? What's the water depth down to your intake structure?
I don't want to misquote that, Commissioner Stallings, but I believe it was in the, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was in the 50-foot range.
54, I'll look it up quick. It's on the Corps Register's site.
Okay, that's close enough.
And, you know, we probably should have toggled this photo in advance, but over on the right, these are actually some of the concrete ballast structures. And if my count is accurate, I believe 16 of those were placed within Call Lake that are the anchorage system for those floating log booms. And there's 2 onshore anchors outside of the Call Lake limits. And I guess another notable, speaking of our crews, I believe each of those were approximately 36,000 pounds. So quite a few getting those from land to barge to submerged position. Before I move on from the intake, any questions on the intake site?
You feel pretty comfortable about hitting the deadline next summer with the intake?
I do. Looking at the intake site, if everything tracks by early part of next year, by spring, that site and the pipeline should be ready to transmit water for startup of the intake site to move it down the 70-mile corridor. Water treatment plant, we'll need to circle back on that portion of the build. Anything else on intake? Moving on to the pipelines. And again, just a few areas along the corridor, and I can touch on this now and sprinkle in some more as we get through the various segments. But from a high level, roughly 99% of the project's been delivered, 97% of it's been installed. We've got a couple of portions of the pipeline segments that are on hold from delivery, most notably within segment 7, west of Old River 3 Mile Road. That's the Arkansas West HDD site. Until that HDD is installed and complete, we can't release the remainder of those pipe deliveries. Likewise, there's some additional pipe deliveries over near Highway 60 towards the northern or eastern end of the segment 7 corridor, and that's near Arkansas East HDD site. One other string within segment 7 while we're on it, there's one Magellan crossing that we'll need to figure out a remobilization and a costing structure for the contractor to go back and complete that scope of work. And I'll touch on this again, but segment 8 currently is the only active ongoing installation heading. The other areas have been complete from an installation of available work pending completion of the HDDs. And if you're out near Call Lake, that crew is working right near Lake Road. So in the near future, barring any more unforeseen weather or rock, things of that nature, hopefully within the next few weeks, those crews have transitioned and working within the USACE property. Look forward to the day. This is all green as I stand here before you, but I guess from a high level, working our way from the lower left near the water treatment plant and working our way on up the corridor. Segments 1 through 5 are 100% constructed. Hopefully within the next month, we've started pipeline filling. We'll start near segment 1, move water into 1, 2, 3, 4, and on down the line. As we get full pipeline segments, we'll isolate, conduct hydrostatic pressure testing. Also within the next couple of months, looking for a mobilization date of the cathodic contractor to come in and begin some of the continuity testing and commissioning efforts along the raw water pipeline corridor. Earlier I'd made mention, we've got a couple of areas, the Arkansas West site and Arkansas East site. Those are the two areas that we'll need to look at future remobilizations of that open cut portion of the pipeline once those drills are constructed. Some older photos, and it looks different today. I believe these were in March or April of this year. This is along Phillips Avenue, some of the restorative efforts following segment 1 installation. Photo on the left is a blow-off valve or a flushing appurtenance. The right is capturing some of the surface restoration as well as the photo on the far right. This is a really tight portion of segment 2 corridor within basically a front yard section, so showing a post-completion effort. And again, looks considerably different today with the vegetation full and complete. Segment 3, likewise, near final restoration as we await final vegetation. And again, if we took a photo today compared to then, it'd look considerably different, but just to establish some of the befores and the afters.
Jason, I think you guys have done a really good job from what I've seen on the dirt work and the restoration. And just to remind myself and the commission, if something happens over, how long are you going to be responsible for filling in with the dirt settles, or there's issues and we call or owners call?
Well, I'd say at a minimum through the totality of the warranty phase, post final completion of the program.
How long's the warranty? 2 years? And we don't get to warranty until we're done with the program, right?
Yeah, so one thing we'll need to talk amongst ourselves, once we do get the pipelines full and ready for intended operation, their commission, we'll need to start talking about those dates and those handoffs, as well as ultimately start up with the water treatment plant. So
Okay.
we fully recognize more conversation to be had.
Sure.
Anything else, Drew?
I look forward to those conversations.
Some of the permanent gate installations within segment 4. Sure the owner's maintenance team access to the limit. This next progress photo, left and right, this is near the northern or eastern end of segment 5 near Q Road. It was a last county road crossing, and this would be just west of the Salt Fork 30-inch horizontal directional drill. Again, this piping today is fully in, connected, and tied to segment 6. It spans through those drills. Segment 6, another example of prior restorative efforts. Within segment 6, we have one little skip section. It's Bodart Creek. When the Garney crews complete segment 8 installation up near Call Lake, they'll remobilize back to complete the Bodart crossing. We've got some new geotechnical information, and we're working through a work plan approach to attack that creek crossing. It's very excessive depths, 35 to 40 plus feet vertical cuts. Again, some of the pipelines appurtenances within segment 6. nearing the completion of segment 7 of available right-of-way. This is just on the west side of Old River Road or 3 Mile Road. From that location extending west is the Arkansas West HDD pipe string that's conflicting for the open cut contractor. And I'll talk more about the HDD repairs and remediations and schedules as we get further into the agenda, but we'll time out several months down the road. Once that scope of work completes, we'll remobilize the segment 7 contractor to complete that remainder scope of work. And the far right depicts some of the drainage areas or creek bank restorations that were previously open cut constructed. Segment 8, this location is some of the preliminary or temporary surface restoration replacement of the topsoil. This is down near the northern side of what we refer to as Arkansas East. That crew is laying from south to north, working their way towards Call Lake. And again, segment 8 and segment 7 were the only 2 segments of 36-inch welded steel pipe. As I'd mentioned earlier, hopefully those crews within the next few weeks have the tunnel at Lake Road threaded, installed, and are working within the USACE property towards the intake site. Standing up near the intake on the USACE property, some of the pipe staging within that undulating train. From this location, the crews are currently west of Lake Road. That photo is facing down towards Lake Road up the top of the hill. Before I get in the HDDs, anything on the open cut raw water pipeline segments? The next series of photos, July and August have been some unique weather events. We've been 103, 107 degrees, and then we've had 2 or 3 inch rain events all at the same time. So not something we fully anticipated, but we're dealing it and making the best of it. These next series of slides are some photos depicting the current HDD coating repair and remediation efforts. Currently those crews are working at the Arkansas West HDD string just west of Old River 3 Mile Road. Looking back, we had our first pre-work meeting July 20th, and then our secondary pre-work meeting hosted on August 2nd. The second meeting was predominantly focused towards the scar guard overwrap. Series of photos, the far left is following the repair of the Paracrete. This is a final surface brush blast or a sweep blast to establish the surface profile prior to placement of the scar guard, which is depicted within the center photo. It's an overwrap. And then the photo on the far right is just a series of side booms handling, picking the pipe string. And as a reminder, each of these drill strings are approximately 2,400 feet, in totality roughly 600,000 pounds of steel there. Guess before I
You're
move
pleased
to,
the way the scar guard's going on?
so far so good, yes. I've heard nothing negative from the field. There's some ongoing efforts, so I guess the primary method is ensure a holiday-free pipeline in any areas that would have a holiday, and essentially that's putting a high voltage test to make sure no voltage passes and comes into contact or grounds to the steel substrate. If you have that, you follow manufacturer guidelines to patch repair those Paracrete J coating systems to ensure it's holiday free. Once that's complete, prepare the surface and then do the scar guard wrap. It is if you haven't seen it, it's first time I've seen it. It is a highly labor intensive process.
Question, who's doing that? Is your crew doing that, or is it subcontracted that?
It's subcontracted down through Northwest Pipe Company. They were the named party within the city directive, and Northwest Pipe has hired a subcontractor to facilitate those repairs.
From out of state?
Yes, their home office in Texas.
It's my understanding that they wet that and then it hardens?
Mm-hmm. It's got it's basically a cure set, so it's pre-wetted, and You apply the wrap with a 50% overlap to ensure the double wrap essentially is what you obtain. And then it's got a plastic outer wrap that is perforated. Once it's perforated, it'll allow it to off gas as it cures out and hardens.
Does an inspector check their work after they've wrapped it?
Yeah, so we've got two major lines of ongoing inspection and observation. We've got a quality control and a quality assurance on site. Portions of the quality control procedures are performed directly by the contractor. Other portions are performed directly by the quality control oversight.
Okay.
Who's doing the holiday testing?
So the contractor hired by LS1 is doing the holiday testing and observed by CMAR, QC and QA concurrently. So the simplest way for me to explain this is nothing advances until there's 100% consensus on site. Any and all parties present throughout the QC, QA have the power of veto. So it has to be a unanimous decision before anything advances to the next step.
On this epoxy wrap, I mean, we were dealing with some really hot temperatures for about 3 weeks. Did that slow things down? Did they get too hot where they couldn't install it, or?
It impeded their work operations just from a safety standpoint. For a few days, they actually initiated I think a 4 or 5 a.m. work shift start to get ahead and beat some of the heat. As we've had some of the rains, the next layer of delay that happened is now we've got condensation and moisture on the pipe stream come sunrise. So they've shifted back to a 7 a.m. The downfall to the condensation is it compromises the ability to do a high voltage holiday test because it'll ground out to the moisture.
Okay. Do they have to get this? What's the temperature range where they can install this? Too hot, too cold? I mean, we're not worried about this dragging on in the winter.
No, I still feel confident the Arkansas West string will be prepped and ready for the installation by close of this month.
Okay.
And then by close of September, the other string at Arkansas East should be prepped and ready.
Good to go.
And I guess on that, from a high level, the HDD contractor is currently scheduled to remobilize immediately following Labor Day weekend, so Tuesday, September 5th. We'll see what the future holds, but you know, the desire is to get both of those HDD strings complete and in the ground, pressure tested by close of this year. We'll have to track and monitor that progress to see if that schedule can be upheld. As the HD installations advance, we'll coordinate and figure out the return mobilizations related to the open cut scopes of work.
So based on that schedule, the contractor to come back to connect the open cut stuff, that can be like early next year?
Possibly, yes. Yep.
But this is kind of the last piece, I think,
It is.
because you're 90+% complete with the pipeline.
Yep. Anything else on pipelines or HDD remediation? I mentioned this earlier. Intermediate has just been intentionally stalled or suspended to maintain crew efforts, focus at the water treatment plant for those critical path efforts. This first photo is just a photo of the pump header and electrical building assembly. And the second photo is a photo of the pre-stressed 1 million gallon storage tank. Anything at intermediate, we'll move on to the water treatment plant. High-level overview, I believe back in March or April when we last presented on this, and it's hard to tell what's happened. So again, I would encourage anyone who hasn't, please make a trip down to the ongoing efforts of the water treatment plant. You'll see changes daily, weekly, and if you happen to go by there monthly or quarterly, you'll be absolutely shocked by how much things do change. This photo here is a looking east towards the northeast. And it's a picture of the granular activated carbon, or the GAC feed pumps, as well as a high service pump station, blended water, and chlorine contact basins between these two structures here. And if you look far enough out in the horizon, that's the existing Plant 2 site for City of Enid. And the existing groundwater storage tank to the right of that appears to be underneath the crane boom mast. Taking a photo standing on top of the filter admin building. If you look way out here, you can kind of see the vertical extension of the rebar. That'll be the future elevator shaft, part of the filter admin building. This is a structure that we're monitoring very closely, very tightly. This is and has remained the critical path for quite some time. And we'll have to have continued and ongoing discussions with the city as this scope of work advances, because this controls many facets to the substantial completion date and the manual startup at the water treatment plant. West of this structure, over here you can see the ozone and chemical feed buildings, as well as a flock sediment building. There's a couple of redundant photos back to back in these next two slides, but this is a 48-inch GAC effluent contactor pipe near the southeast corner of the filter admin building. And then over to the right side, this is some of the stormwater pipe on the north side of the terminal storage reservoirs. Standing over towards the opposing side from that prior slide, again, just another photo of the 48-inch GAC effluent piping assembly facing towards the filter admin building. And I guess if you do make a recent site visit, looking at this site, outside of this filter admin building, there's some ongoing placement of structural steel membrane at the other masonry building units. Next couple of photos, we've got on the left, this is some of the conduits for a transformer and permanent power supply on the south side of the filter admin building. And then the photo on the right is again at the filter admin building, one of the mezzanine slabs for the electrical rough-in. The next one is looking south from the north end of the filter admin building. And again, high service pump station, blended water, chlorine contact, some of the ongoing concrete placements. This is looking northeast from the southwest corner. Those rain events that we talked about earlier amidst the 103s and 107s have posed some concern for us trying to expedite the structural backfill. And this again is in preparation for the permanent power supply brought in by OG&E at the high service blended water facility. Next photo, and if you've been at our construction trailers at the Seymour trailer, as you pull in off to the right, this is the north side of the Flocksed basin. And again, it's hard to tell in the photos, but you can see these vertical pipes. Up above them are the actual internal plate settlers. Some of the buildings that I'd mentioned earlier with ongoing structural shell membrane happening, the chemical feed building. This is a photo facing north, followed by another photo of the chemical building with the wall facing south. So from a super high level, major focus of the water treatment plant remains placement of concrete in order to get the filter admin building and the Miller tip and scope of work underway. As those efforts advance and we get them on site, those crews again will shift focus towards the intermediate. But outside of the filter admin building, extensive efforts on the structural shell, the various piping, mechanical, and finalization of the yard piping. So I think from an all-in standpoint, the heavy lifting should be wrapped up near spring of next year. We'll need to track and monitor to see how the filter admin building progresses from there.
Jason, are there any, I know early on we had a few burbles with the design. Are there any, are you far enough along that you can say there are really no design issues that are going to pop up and hit us in the head?
I wish I had the magic wand for that. I can't give you an honest answer until we progress further down the road. I know we still have our work cut out us on the filter ad milling just to get that moving from a schedule standpoint. But as far as remainder of the program, historically, anytime there's a new water treatment plant or a greenfield startup, there's going to be some kind of bump or pothole on the road. It's hard telling what that might be, but there's a lot of overlapping scopes of work with Garver carries the automation component, trying to get all that tied into Garney's scope of work with the hit the buttons and provide a manual startup function. Time will tell how all those pieces come together, so it's difficult for me to provide that crystal ball today.
And Rob, are you speaking on the mechanical side of it or constructional, or all of it?
All the above.
All the above?
Obviously, if they hit a burble in the road that they weren't planning on, it comes back towards us as a change order. And that's what I'm trying to get to. Is there a possibility of anything from a design perspective that's going to come back and cost us more money?
I mean, there's a few items today we're in active discussion with Morale and Gerald on, but we don't have enough intel in hand today to have more formalized conversations. All we can do is track and work together to see if it is a matter that needs resolve or if we find a way to make it work.
Okay.
And Jason, I would just remind everybody, we have a contingency that hasn't been touched yet, right? I know you have some items that are going to be coming at some point as part of the discussion that we're having, but that's a $4.4 million contingency.
Yeah, so there's a host of items within the bid package, reconciliations and amendments to those bid packages that are under contract that will be formally tapping into that available contingency. So we're working through with Gerald and Morale that formalized process once we get those projections in place to publicize that.
Couple questions I have. On those, the exterior portion of the buildings at the water treatment plant, I know those are all either poured concrete or stand-up concrete walls. What is the exterior finish on that going to look like? Is it just painted? Or is there some kind of material that goes on the outside of those buildings, or?
Yeah, within like these Kimfield buildings and the sediment buildings, et cetera, there is ongoing structural shell and insulated panel assemblies that do affix to those. So with what you see today on these concrete mortar block assemblies, that is far from the final product.
Commissioner Blevins, I know one of the questions on your mind is there going to be a blank canvas out there that we could paint a mural on? Is that what you were thinking?
I'm sure they can come up with something for it.
Well, you're on pace now, so we can. And I'm just kidding, but yeah, if you leave some blank concrete walls,
It can be painted,
we
yes.
might
Yes.
we might come with a mural. So
Another question I have, and this is going all the way back to the intake, the concrete large cylinders that you are pouring and they're about to come out of the ground. So I understand that's what the turbine goes down into, right? That's going to
Yes.
suck the water out of the lake.
Yes, sir.
Are those turbines on site now?
Those for that facility are not on site. What I heard from our team is we just recently submitted a testing submittal today that's being worked alongside the engineering team, and then that'll be the remainder of the final factory witness test. I suspect the witness testing should happen within the next 1 to 2 months, and then those pumps will be available to be released and shipped on site.
Okay, so you don't see a delay on those?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. And then the last question I have right now, you mentioned a while ago about going underneath the Magellan line, which is gasoline diesel. I didn't get exactly what you said. Did you say something about coming back to renegotiate those?
So that crossing, There was not an executed encroachment agreement at the time the contractor got there. Magellan has since asked for an additive tunnel to be placed underneath those two high-pressure gas lines. So at the time, that scope of work could not be executed. Contractor skipped in order to maintain productivity and move forward. We'll probably, once we get through the reconciliation, that bid package for that amended scope of work for them, we'll capture that remaining work when they remobilize back to do the piping following HDD, Arkansas West, Magellan, and then East. All within segment 7.
Okay, but there were some funds there already for him to have done that, but that contractor, but they chose to skip that at the time.
At the time, it was a planned open cut, and then Magellan came forth and requested a tunneled crossing that was not in place.
Okay.
That seems like a scope change that we would use, or potentially look at the, maybe not scope change is the right word, but I think we've had some discussions about the contingency with that. Certainly we have more discussions to have, but I think what the council is concerned about is a future change order. And I know we're going to do everything we can, working with the contingency to try to resolve those issues, is my understanding.
Yeah, I think there's lots of conversation to be had on that and to figure out the best and most appropriate funding mechanism.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Well, one question, as a city, as the customer, if necessary, will we present them with a punch list? When we go through engineering and make sure everything meet our expectations?
That is correct. I think we have Garver. They do the final walkthrough, and we will be with them, along with them, so,
Okay.
on every item.
Are you planning to talk about the Chestnut, or are you done?
I can speak at a high level on Chestnut. Generally speaking, the presumed start date on that will be sometime this fall. I don't have that date completely nailed down at this time.
Okay.
Generally speaking, when the crew wraps up on segment 8, they'll finish the remaining scope of work at Bodar Creek within segment 6. That was the creek that was revised by the geotech. And then whether we elect to initiate some of the tunnel or the HDD efforts in advance to start a pipe installation, we'll work to try to refine that up and firm it up by close of this month.
Where did we land on the amount that we're going to bore and the amount we're going to open cut?
It's roughly a 2,000-foot directional drill, spanning on opposing sides of Oakwood near the school section.
Near the what?
Near the school at Oakwood and Chestnut.
And the rest of it will be open cut?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Garland Road has a case tunnel crossing.
okay.
Everything else will be open cut.
What's the time frame that you think to do that? Is that a 6-8 month process to do that Chestnut project?
Yeah, I think early part of next year, hopefully Chestnut's installed, commissioned, and ready for intended operation. Spring of next year.
At one time, we talked about an AT&T easement and a Suddenlink easement that I think we were working on. Have those been rectified to where we can move?
Yeah, I think this sudden link easement is being rectified, so they are working with us. So when there is a cable, so they are temporarily going to put it right next to the fence line and come back, put it in, like, after the construction, they are going to work with them, so.
The AT&T line, was that on Garland, or is there one on Chestnut too?
Chestnut, like, there are a couple of crossings,
Okay.
so they're working with them.
Okay. Anything else anybody wants to ask? Is that all you had, Jason?
That's it.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. We appreciate it. Appreciate the update. I'm going to move on to 3.2, update on the Suddenlink franchise renewal. And
Okay.
turn this over to you,
We
Counselor.
started negotiations in 2017. We had several meetings to negotiate, and we had a public hearing. it was a tough time. It was a contentious hearing, and after that, suddenly stopped negotiating. Meanwhile, Blue Peak and Dobson came, and we prepared a ordinance giving them a permit to operate. Dobson, it's mostly Blue Peak because Dobson doesn't have cable, but Blue Peak does. Okay, so that provides some competition. This spring, after those, Altice or Suddenlink or Optimum came back and wanted to begin negotiations again. Their franchise is technically long since stopped, but they have been honoring their franchise agreement, and we've been honoring the old franchise agreement. And I've worked with their attorney and with Mr. Kennedy to modify the ordinance that would provide them with a renewal. Really, the only difference is that that their system is in place, so the build-out requirements that we put in for Blue Peak don't really apply to them until there's a major new development in town. If we have a major development, then they'll have the same build-out requirements. Tonight, all we're really doing is having another public hearing, seeing what the public think now, and depending on what the public says and what you all think, we'll perhaps go into executive session and talk about options, or perhaps just put it on to pass an ordinance that is very similar to the one we did for Blue Peak, except for the fact that the build-out is a little different, and that this is a renewal. And that's all I have.
And that's a renewal for how long? Is it 5 years?
Well, it is a renewal for, it can't be longer than,
It's 10 years.
yeah,
It's 10 years under the ordinance.
10
yeah.
years.
But I think it could be longer, but we were anticipating 10. And then we'd rethink it. Okay, and that's tonight at 7:30. I don't know how many people will show up. The last one was packed. This one, I don't think it will be as contentious or as long. But that's my guess.
Before you leave, will we have to go through this with all the franchises, all the companies that come in, as far as an agreement, franchise agreement?
Well, any cable companies, yes, they would need to have a permit or a franchise.
So about every
And-
10 years will each one of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it generally, other than the 2017, it's generally, once you're in our right-of-ways and there's a strong, they don't want to stop. But cable franchises are very different than like OG&E and ONG, because OG&E and ONG are governed by state franchise laws, not the federal government.
So, wait just a second, I still have another question. Please.
Yeah, no problem.
So I know that on our franchise agreement with Suddenlink, we receive a certain amount of dollars for every TV subscription that we have. Mm-hmm. You're telling me that Blue Peak also has cable. So are we receiving subscription
Yes.
agreement dollars
Yes.
from them also?
Yes.
But not Dobson, because they only stream, right?
Right. Dobson's
Yes.
just internet. So
It's
we
just
have a
internet.
right-of-way.
And FCC doesn't let us do just internet.
Right.
And we don't get any franchise fee for the internet that Suddenlink does or the internet that Blue Peak does.
Right. Okay.
Just
Or
the
Dobson.
cable. Anything else?
Yes. That
Yes.
makes,
You know where I was going with all that.
Okay.
exactly. You know, I mean, so with Dobson, I mean, you can still get television service through the internet without the title. So basically, we have two companies where we're benefiting from, but the third one, how does that work?
That's federal
It's
law.
a federal law.
That's pretty
And-
smart. I mean, but a benefit to the city, you get what, Mayor, I know exactly what you mean, so.
Well, but
Has Dobson
it's,
set up their network citywide, or is it just in certain neighborhoods?
I don't think that they've gone citywide.
They're
But
supposed
they
to be
have,
working
but they
citywide.
can go citywide.
Dobson?
Yes, and I think no one will probably dispute that cable isn't what it once was. You know, in the 70s and 80s, it was the thing, and now with all of the different, people that are very young, a lot of them don't see the point of cable. But we have jurisdiction over cable, we don't over the other, and competition is an American good thing.
Well, I've got a question to
Yes.
sort of maybe bridge the gap here. Is for Blue Peak does both, right? Is that the right word?
yes.
Okay. Does the city receive benefits on Blue Peak cable only, not their fiber internet?
Right.
Okay, so it's no different.
No. Blue Peak.
Blue Peak's the
can-
same as Dobson. If you don't get your cable internet prescription, but you get the fiber with Blue Peak's not paying the city for that.
Right.
Our issue up here, though,
Is the internet.
Colonel, is that the cable subscription's going down, 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 which is our revenue.
Right, I don't have cable.
Uh,
I don't have
Yeah.
cable.
You're not helping us.
Okay.
But I had Suddenlink internet and I didn't have cable though, so you were gonna
Yeah,
get.
it's an FCC issue that was
Yeah.
passed back during the 80s, and we can't seem to get anybody to hear us.
My only question is, Morelli, they're working with you on the situation with the Chestnut line?
Yes,
That they're actually coming to the table and working with us?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I need
That's
to
why
know.
we came back tonight, is
what I need to know.
that they were working with us.
Gerald, what is the magnitude of the number? I don't remember from our budget hearings.
Well, I've got Jennifer convenient, but I didn't let her know. I think it used to be around $600,000, I think. It's shrunk down to, I'm going to say, about less than $400,000, about $350,000. Jennifer can probably fact check me on the number.
That's all, just a round number.
And I just want to let you know, Mayor, we do have some reps from Optimum
Yeah.
that will be here that can, I just want to introduce, Johnny, would you stand up, and you guys can probably come up in the regular meeting, and you want to introduce your Suddenlink Optimum team?
Yeah, Johnny Moyer, Government Affairs, work with the city staff. Paul Cason.
Heck, I should probably have you come to the mic, I'm sorry.
I apologize.
My communication guys are
No, you're good.
in the background saying, Gerald, have him come to the mic.
Yeah, Johnny Moyer, Government Affairs for Altice USA. I have Paul Cason, he's one of our consultants for our franchise renewals in the state, and Ray McCready, he's a director of our field operations here in the state as well.
Okay, I just wanted to introduce you. I know if the commission wants to hear from you now, that's great. If you're probably going to lead off, I guess, at the hearing, and then we'll hear from the public. So thank you for coming. I was just telling him before the meeting, I read about him in the paper because you were something with the broadband office at the state level. You were quoted for Optimum on some stuff.
Yep. So, well, I appreciate you having us, and if you have questions either now or at the next meeting, I'd be happy to answer for you.
Okay. And Bryce, do you have anything to add? I tell you what, man, you're looking pretty sharp.
Oh, thanks.
Are you taking pictures for GQ, or what's going on?
Why not? Thank you for letting me work for the city. I've negotiated all these cable
Yes.
agreements back since the early 80s through TCI and Cox and Suddenlink and
Yeah.
You know,
And all the different
a number
names.
of them.
Yes.
You know what the difference is now. I mean, we've discussed what the difference is now. There's also a state law. You know, if you look at our cable agreement right now that we wrote, it's very thick.
Mm-hmm.
It's very detailed. And it's got really stiff requirements in it, okay? But the state, all thinking state, adopted a law that says in the event a municipality grants an overlapping certificate, license, permit, or franchise for video services within its jurisdiction on terms or conditions more favorable or less burdensome than exist in any existing certificate, license, permit, or franchise within the municipality, the holder of the existing certificate, license, permit, or franchise shall be entitled upon written notice to the municipality to adopt the terms of the overlapping certificate, license, permit, or franchise that are more favorable or less burdensome. So, I mean, what does that mean? Well, it means that thick franchise agreement that we've had,
For
you know,
40 years.
because we have entered into another agreement, and that is with Blue Peak. Okay, so that is why the agreement that you see looks like the Blue Peak agreement. It's in order to conform with this section, which the state has imposed on us. So there's not only, you know, federal law that governs this, there's also state law that governs it. Thank goodness they haven't done what they've done in Texas, and that's totally step in and propose a state model, and every city just has to adopt that state model. So there still is some flexibility in Oklahoma. They haven't closed it all up. And that's why when you look at this agreement, it looks a lot like what you're used to looking like with Blue Peak, and that is we cannot impose on them provisions which are less or more burdensome or less favorable than those that are on Blue Peak. So that's why we're really here. You know, the issue of placing some fee on the internet providers makes total sense. They're all using the right of way. I mean, the burden is the same. You know, they're in the poles, they're in the right of way, there's limited space in the right of way, but in order to get these, you know, these telecommunication companies out there, they gave them a bit of an incentive, and perhaps that did create the bill that we were hoping. You know, we must admit we were back there in 17. We were talking to them about doing a fiber network. What was the answer? No. And then along comes Blue Peak and says, let us put a fiber network. How much is that going to cost us? Nothing. You know, we just want to do it. We have this money to put it in. And then, of course, Dobson came after that. So, you know, and it surprised us all. It surprised us in Enid. It surprised us in the smaller communities. And now they're everywhere. And everyone's streaming really fast with really high numbers and really, really happy. You know, the issue here is why are they here now? You know, I mean, I don't know. Because it's been a while, you know, I smell a sale, you know, and that's, you know, you can even ask them that question, you know, that's a legitimate question. I mean, why are they zipping up all these, you know, agreements now? Because they're, you know, they're going to all the communities and asking, you know, for these agreements. And
Well,
it may be that they
Seabridge Acquisitions kind of
it may be
says
that
it.
it may be that they just decided to get up to speed with the communities that they're in and get a licensing agreement. Now, I don't want to fault them. They have been paying us the franchise fee, and they have been following the terms of the agreement that's no longer in place. But you know, you may want to ask that question. Any questions for me? Thanks.
Okay. Item number 3.3, update on the Eisenhower Bridge closure.
Mayor and Commissioners, every 2 years, Department of Transportation inspects bridges all over the town, and they inspect only bridges this spans more than 20 feet. This particular bridge was last inspected. We go back to the location. Eisenhower Bridge is just a couple blocks east of Oakwood and south of Chestnut. This Eisenhower connects between Randolph and Chestnut. That is a thoroughfare. This is about 40 feet long. It has a four barrel, 7 by 10 feet barrels. The bridge was constructed back in 60s, and there was an asphalt was laid over in 90s. Currently, the latest inspection was done in August 1st. With the severity of the condition of bridge, we had to close the bridge within a couple days. This is the picture that was taken in 21. You can see calcification right underneath it. It started leaking. The leaks were there previously, but you can see all the effects of the leaks, calcification. When we had the latest inspection in August 2nd, so this hole was done, it's about a couple feet wide. Just 2 days later, it became not 2 days, just a day later, it became 6 feet wide. So with infiltration, delaminating the concrete, it's pretty bad. So with the safety in mind, this bridge is being closed currently. To expedite the work, we are working on whether can we do a just deck replacement or complete reconstruction. So today, the engineer was there, took a core samples of the walls, the inner walls, to see if the walls are in any good shape. So we have to wait another 2 to 3 weeks to get the results of that one. So simultaneously, we are doing in-house design for both deck replacement as well as complete reconstruction. So if you have any questions?
So you're looking at both avenues right now in-house, waiting on the results of those core samples?
Right.
Raleigh, how can we expedite once you have the information and we know which direction to go? How can we expedite getting it done?
So this bridge is similar to the one on Norman Bridge. So we are also working with the Norman, the contractor, Haskell Lemon. We can change order units. We are working with him, and the contractor also inspected it. So I haven't heard from him. So in the next week or so, we'll sit down with him and talk to him about we can expedite that part of it.
I think we're going to want to try to expedite whatever that means. It'll still be a long time.
Yep.
Haskell Lemon that you have quotes on now, this is about twice as big, or?
Almost time and a half.
Time and a half, okay.
Yeah.
Do we know how much traffic goes up and down that road?
I can get a fairly decent numbers, right? Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I can get you that.
Can we pull up, you had a video.
Yes, I want.
That's very, very instructive to when people ask, well, why did you close it? If the hole there is not big enough, look at this. You see the deck moving.
What type of vehicle went over top there?
It's a Ford 150.
It's simple 150.
Yeah.
Holly, do you think you're gonna be able to just take the deck off and re-pour a deck up there? Or you're gonna have to take those barrels out and rebuild from the?
Like with the infiltration going through that walls, so we wanted to make sure what is the condition of the walls too, so.
So that's where they were born, was the walls down underneath the
Yep.
deck? Okay.
So you'll know in about 3-4 weeks, you said?
Yep.
So what I want to know is obviously it needs to be replaced because otherwise we'll have another fire truck down in a hole again from going over a bridge that obviously a 150 can make it move. I'm sure a fire truck can make it collapse. So is this gonna be built up enough to handle our fire trucks
When we build it, yes.
when we build it back?
Yep, yep.
Okay, so we'll go a little bit better than what we got?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Just to help us understand the magnitude of cost, we're talking up to maybe at least a couple $1,000,000?
Yep, if complete reconstruction takes about a couple million.
If it's just a deck, it'd be less.
Less, yes.
So I hope the tests come back good.
Yeah.
And it's my understanding there's no additional funding that can come from the state or anywhere on those issues. I mean, that's
We will beat the bushes with Stephen and Morale and ODOT, but I'm not aware. Are you aware of any?
I don't.
okay.
We will work on a solution for that as best we can.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Morale. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you, sir.
Item 3.4, upon renaming, or update on renaming a portion of Johnson Street after Lydell Carr.
It's going to be Scott. He's getting
Okay.
into his uniform.
All right.
Well, this really isn't about OU, but Lydell Carr did play for OU, and Gerald is a huge Cowboys fan, so I have to take my jab.
Hey, this is all good, though. Are you going to
That's
show
right.
us Lydell running for touchdowns?
You bet.
Okay.
Against
We've got
OSU.
that video. We'll play it here now.
Run a trap play, and Lydell Carr pops it, and of course Lydell's got good speed downfield blocking the Sewell and Shepard, and Lydell got the ball in the wrong arm, and he fumbles it.
That far away from the national championship. Back to the run to go the Sooners, and they break a big one. Off and running is Lydell Carr, and he is going to go the distance. Lydell Carr's in standing up, and the national championship. Pinching the middle. Carr gains big yardage anyway. He's still going. Inside the 40, all the way to the Texas 34. Right. Inside the car, spins out of a tackle, knocks his own man down, still running. What a pull. Inside the...
First play, big Lydell ricochets through there, long run. Carr is out of the shot. Kids were getting on last week talking about, well, the Carr's in the shot.
Comes alive.
Lydell Carr breaks outside, beer play, hand off, and Lydell gets hurt on this play. Gets stuck in his knee, takes the ball about the 18-yard.
The sideline at times. Hand off, and it goes to Lydell Carr, and off goes the big fullback from Enid, Oklahoma. Heading for the end zone, does not get in. He's down to the 4-yard line.
Second and 4. And the ball to fullback. Good run. Lydell Carr breaks back on the beer play. Full tackled in closing and the ball to fullback. Lydell runs away.
At the 31.
And there's Lydell. Bye-bye.
The very next play, 31-yard touchdown run by Carr. I hurled a guy here at the cotton ball on the left side.
Let's go back to this play.
That looked like Earl Campbell. Lydell
Lydell
Carr.
Carr, touchdown. 45 yards to 35 yards.
41.
And the ball trap play. Lydell Carr for about 34 yards. And good run by Lydell. Steve, and here's the second play of the game. Run the trap to Lydell Carr, and he nearly scores here. Outruns that guy. They nearly don't get him down. You get the ball.
Second snap. There goes Carr. Inside. Touchdown, Oklahoma.
Reminds me of my college days when I used to sit up in the stands and wish I could play like that.
Well, hey, Mayor and Commissioners, we heard Stacy Norwood came and visited with us last March, and we talked about the idea of renaming a street after Lydell Carr. And it's been 40 years since the 1983 state championship of Enid High School. They beat Tulsa Union 14 to nothing. Booker T. So these are some of classmates, teammates, friends. So thank you for being here tonight. And so tonight we have just a request and kind of going over what that process would be if we do the street renaming. So what was brought forward was Johnson Street, and I forget the address, Stacy, but I believe the Carrs used to live on Johnson Street, still live there. So the portion of Johnson for under consideration would be from Garriott going north all the way to Chestnut, and then there's just a tiny section of Johnson going north above Chestnut. So all in all, there's about 47 property owners with the address of Johnson that would be impacted by this name changing. The process would involve a public outreach meeting, and then we would then schedule another meeting to do an ordinance and a hearing. And we would do outreach, we would notify service providers, and it would take 60 to 90 days to get all of those things done. We could move fairly quickly on it. We could get a notice out as soon as end of this week and have our first public meeting. If you would scroll down just a little bit. We could have a public meeting next Thursday, 6 p.m. and discuss this, kind of have input from the public. And then we could have it under consideration for ordinance and have the hearing on September 19th. And sometime in the fall, we could be putting up signs and finalizing the project. So those are some of the steps and timelines on doing this street renaming. Like I said, there would be about 47 people that would be impacted by an address change. And after all of that, we would notify PD, notify 911, USPS, and that would wrap it up. So that is the request.
Is the plan to name it Lydell Carr or Carr?
You know, I don't know if we have a finalization on that. I have it Lydell Carr Street Drive. It could be Lydell Carr Drive.
Yeah, I think our next step is to notify those 47 owners about this public meeting we would like to have pretty soon, as soon as next week, and get their feedback. And I would recommend that certainly the commission could come to that. Commissioner Stallings, I think this might be your...
That is in my ward, and I'd like to make a comment. I talked to Scott a little bit about this. I'm not very comfortable renaming 47, making 47 people change their address. What I think is more appropriate is let's find a street over by the football field. Something when you go walk to the football game, you're walking on Lydell Street. I mean, I watched him play. He was a great player, and I want to honor him, but I just don't think Johnson's such a main thoroughfare, and there are so many people on there. I don't think that's the right street. That's my personal opinion. So.
Okay. Well, we can certainly take that feedback and work with Stacy and the group to, our intent here is to find a proper way to honor him, and I think that's come from the 40th anniversary championship team, and sir, I'm sorry, I should know you because you played on the team, but I think that's your intent. I think isn't the school system doing something on the 15th? Obviously, this isn't going to happen by the 15th, whatever it is, but the intent is, I believe Mr. Carr will be back for the football game, so that's good feedback for us.
Anybody else have a comment on that? Anyone? Okay. Sure, Stacy.
Thanks, everyone, and welcome back to. I've been gone. Somebody's been gone here. I'm glad to be here. Good to see you guys. Good to see you all working and doing the job. But I'd like you just to take into consideration. I still would like to go through the street because his mother and Dad lived on the street, and that's where he grew up. And that's just the area of town where, he's kind of got a legacy down through that area of going to McKinley Elementary and to Waller Elementary. He is Enid, Oklahoma. And like you heard on the video, they said, welcome from Enid, and just really put our name on the map. So I really would like to stream that down a little bit further, and really like to go in front of his mother's house, how proud she would be to live on her son, a street that was named after her son, and the work that he put in to get there for us, and for our entertainment pleasure, but also for us. So I appreciate him, and it also goes right by the church that he grew up in. So that's kind of why we selected just that area of town going down that way. And I know about the inconvenience of the 47 people, but if any of them know Lydell from growing up in that area, they would be proud. But I think that you would take it before them, find out where we are. But that's what we would like. Danny Collins is here. He's part of the 40th anniversary committee, and there's a lot they're trying to do on the 15th of September. They're playing Edmond North, I do believe, and I'd like to invite you guys all to the game, Enid High game. But what we were looking to do is, and hoping to be able to do, and I see there's a process here, but we were hoping to be able to get the street name and present that. If we can get it approved by you guys, and we don't even have to have it done, but get the name and get a street sign and give that to him and say, in your honor. And it's just a unique thing to give someone something that has given this city so much, and a lot of us so much, a memento of we thank you for what you did and the work that you put in to get there. God gave you natural ability, but you enhanced it. You did what you had to do to make it better, and you really did make us proud. So again, going on to OU, but he's just been a great guy, and as Danny said in his last comments, he was just that type of guy, that everybody on the team loved. And I really wanted to do and want to do this before he dies. Normally we wait until they're gone and then try to commend them and their kids and that sort of thing. But Lydell still lives in Dallas, Texas. He plans to be here on the 15th. So that's kind of where the push was for the 15th. For the 40, it's been 40 years, and Enid hasn't won a state championship since. And the state championship win is hard. It's at the highest level that we're going at, a 6A level. And it's really not something you do every day or every week or years. It's been 40 years, and Enid pulled it off, and we just want to commend him for that work. And Danny and the team, did you guys have anything you wanted to add? A lot of celebration. They're also, from what I hear, they're planning to retire his jersey out there that night on the 44 jersey that he wore at Enid High that night as well. So a lot of accolades, but for the whole team. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, that being said, we're going to adjourn, and we will convene back for our regular session at 6:30.